Good afternoon and good morning for those in Japan and other parts of Asia. I hope that you're safe and doing well. It's very warm today in our area. Certainly, we are feeling climate change. I'm Gi Shin, Director of the Shorenstein Asia Pacific Research Center here at Stanford. I'm really delighted to welcome all of you to our seminar today on how can women shine brighter in Japan? Gains and obstacles in women's advancement in Japanese society. So this is the final of our seminar series that we offer this quarter on the theme of negotiating women's rights and gender equality in Asia. In this series, we are looking at women's rights and the diversity and complexity of gender issues in contemporary Asia. So today we are focusing on Japan. I'm very happy to introduce my colleague, Professor Kyo Tsutsui, who leads our Japan program. So Professor Tsutsui will introduce our speakers and also moderate the panel. So once again, welcome to our seminar and hope you'll enjoy today's panel discussion. So once again, this is the last part of our seminar series. So have a nice summer and see you all in the fall. Thank you. Kyo?
Great, thank you, Georg, for the kind introduction. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our APAC webinar series final session. And this quarter, the APAC webinar series has focused on women's rights and gender equality in Asia. And it is perhaps fitting that Japan is the focus of this concluding session, considering that Japan is a country that has wrestled with gender equality for the longest time. Women's rights movement in Japan started in the early 20th century, led by activists like Hiratsuka Raicho and Ichikawa Sae. Women have been voting in elections, having full suffrage since 1946. Women are nearly equally represented in institutions of higher education in Japan. And an equal employment opportunity law has been in place since 1986. And also the government has made various other efforts to increase women's representation in society, most notably with Prime Minister Abe's Womenomics since 2015, which promoted specific targets, such as the one for women to hold 30% of leadership positions by 2020. And despite all these factors that might predict women's success in the workplace, advancement of women into important positions has been an elusive goal in Japan for decades. So why is that? And what needs to change in Japan to enable women to, quote unquote, shine brighter in Japan? To discuss these questions, we are fortunate to have on this panel two leaders who have been making important contributions to gender equality in Japan. Their presentations include their life stories, so I won't spend too much time introducing them today. But let me just say that I couldn't think of better speakers than them in discussing what gains have been made and what obstacles remain in advancement of women in the Japanese business and government. Our first speaker is Naomi Koshi, who is a lawyer who became the first female mayor in Japan. She governed Otsu City, the capital of Shiga Prefecture, for 8 years and accomplished so much there. And she is currently a partner at the law firm Miura Partners. And she's also a co-founder and CEO of OnBoard K.K, a company that focuses on diversifying Japanese corporate boards. Second speaker is Mika Nabashima, who has been at Tokyo Marine Group, the oldest and the largest insurance company, and one of the most prestigious Japanese corporations since 1991. And she quickly climbed the corporate ladder with assignments at Tokyo Marine America as well, becoming the company's first female C-suite officer in April 2021, when she took the position of Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. They will each make a brief presentation first, and then we will get right to the discussion. So the audience, please feel free to start submitting questions in the Q&A box, and we will try to integrate them in our discussion. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming our two speakers, and we will start with Ms. Koshi's presentation. Koshi-san, please.
Okay, thank you, Kyo-san. Thank you so much for wonderful introduction. I'm Naomi Koshi. I was not the first mayor, first female mayor, but I was the youngest female mayor in Japan. So first, I want to talk about 4 things. And first, who am I? And this is can you see the picture? This is a picture of Otsu, my city. So I was mayor of Otsu, and I was raised here. But the idea to run for mayor came when I was in the US. So this is my picture. And before I went to the US, I practiced law, corporate law. Then I went to Harvard Law School. And next year, this picture is different, but in 2009, I worked at law firm in New York City. And one day, my coworker, a male American lawyer, told me that he was going to take paternity leave for a year. And I was very surprised because at that time in Japan, I haven't heard of any male lawyers or employees around me ever taking paternity leave. So I was so surprised. And at that time, I first realized that's the situation of Japanese women. At that time, almost 60% of women quit their job after they having children because they couldn't find nursery to take care of them. So almost always, mothers would quit job, not fathers. So Japanese women had to make a choice, job or children. So I was thinking, I decided to try to change this situation. So I thought we should be able to have both, job or family. So I went back to Japan in 2011 to run for mayor. And I was elected in 2012. So at that time, I was 36 years old and the youngest female mayor in Japanese history. So this is my campaign and I was elected. So I want to mention a little bit about what I did for 8 years. So one term is 4 years. So I completed 2 terms. So I focused on improving childcare system to encourage women to stay in workplace. So I built this chart. I built 54 nurseries for over 3,000 children. So before, mothers had to wait to put their children into nursery. However, now they don't have to wait in Otsu. As a result, this chart, the number of working mothers with children under 5 years old has increased by 70%. And also, the population of Otsu City has increased because young couples move to Otsu, where they can find nurseries. So I served 2 terms and I feel like I had accomplished my goal. So I didn't run for the 3rd term. Now I back to practice law. And also I launched my company OnBoard. So this is a company we try to put more women on corporate board. So next, I want to talk about reality of women's advancement in Japan. So first, this chart, as you know, Japan is far behind other countries on gender equality. According to Global Gender Gap Report, Japan is ranked 120th among 156 countries. So the score is health and education is good, but economic and politics are bad. So now I'm going to show you some chart. So this is the employment rate for women. So this means women 30 years old quit job because they have to raise their children. So before it shows women used to quit their job after they got married or had children, but now more women continue to work. The reason is, as I said, as more nursery built, more women can stay in the workplace. So next is, so as a result, household with a housewife are decreasing. And on the other hand, the household with double incomes increasing. So now it's opposite. So next is this chart, pay gap between women and men. So there is a huge pay gap in Japan. So women on average, it is a little bit, this chart is 2018, but still now it's a pay gap is like 80%. So this is a pay gap worldwide. So Japan is red and US is green and average is blue. So Japan's pay gap is still huge. So why there is a huge pay gap? I want to mention 3 reasons. First, more women are part-time worker, or so this chart, regular employees and non-regular employees, such as part-time worker. So more female employees work as part-time and non-regular employees, so their salary is low. And the second reason is industry. So this chart a little bit confusing, but more women work in industries with lower wages, yellow part, such as nursing. And fewer women work in industry with higher wages, such as pilot, doctor, CPAs. And the third reason is this. Women, even if women can continue to work the same company, their position is different from men. So this chart is Japan is left. So there are only 15 female managers in Japan. And also, this is a chart of female board members in Japan. So last year, there is only 7.5 female board members. So their position, women's position is lower than men. So there is a huge pay gap. So this is a percentage of female board members. So Japan is very behind. So I want to quick mention what is the difference between public sector and the private sector. So this is a chart of percentage of women representation in lower house. So Japan is 10%. And almost for 15 years, it's not changing, about 10%. But go back to this chart. So this is the board members at private corporation. So 10 years ago, it was 1%, but now it was 7 or 8%. It's still 7%, but it's increasing. But on the other hand, in political arena, the representation is not changing for 15 years. So the reason why, I mean, like political arena is the same, but private sector, it's changing. So one of the reasons is pressure from foreign investors. So this is a very, there are some examples. For example, proxy voting company and some institutional investors ask Japanese company to have more female board members. This is the first reason. Also, Japanese government and Tokyo Stock Exchange introduced corporate governance code. And this code requires listed company to have diversified board. And also the third reason is this, Japanese government set some goal, and also Keidanren, Japan's primary business association, set a goal. This is a 30% female board members by 2030. So I want to talk about my experience. Why do we need diversity? So this is a picture when I was mayor. So I was 36 and I went to some party, but other than me is almost all men and older than me. And this is in City Hall, I have meeting. So when I was elected, almost all my subordinates, such as managers who work directly with me, were men older than me. So there were 58, 59 years old. So as you know, City Hall employees have the lifetime employment system. So they generally work there for more than 30 years. So one day in a meeting, I was trying to convince to adopt one of my policy. And one of the manager was so mad and he shouted and he punched the desk and he left, slamming the door loudly. So I was so shocked. And I was thinking, so why did he do that? And one reason that happened because I was young mayor. So they expected mayor is older man. That is one reason. But the other reason is that I had different viewpoint. I was different from them. I mean, when I was elected mayor in 2012, we expected the population of Otsu City will be decreasing. However, the budget of the spending budget was the same as 40 or 50 years ago, when the population of Otsu was rapidly increasing. So I said, oh, now it's different. We have to change the way we spend money. However, the managers said, oh, we have done it the same way for a long time. You should follow our way. That's what they said. So we argued a lot. So I thought they couldn't see the outside City Hall. The situation is changing, but their way of spending money is the same. I think this is a non-diversified decision-making process. People get stuck in their way of thinking and do not see what is happening outside their organization. So I think this is not only in City Hall. So many Japanese companies have lifetime employment system. So maybe the same thing happen in the private sector. So I'm going to show you some survey. So first, this survey shows that on average, the stock price of companies with female director is higher than companies without female directors worldwide. And this is Japan. Even in Japan, companies with 20 or 30% female directors have stock price higher than other companies. So these surveys means female directors increase corporate value, or at least shareholders believe the female directors increase corporate value. So I now serve two boards, SoftBank K.K and VCube. So I believe I can contribute to increase corporate value because I'm different from others. So I want to mention a little bit what do I do now. So my company OnBoard. So we do training. So this is Japanese, but we provide seminars to female board members and candidates. And also matching. So we introduce trained female directors to Japanese company, including listed companies, also startups. So I try to put more women on Japanese corporate board. So I believe diversity is not only for women. Diversity is a tool for growth and innovation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Koshi-san. We'll move over to Nabashima-san's presentation now.
Hello, my name is Mika Nabashima. As was introduced, I am Tokyo Marine Group's Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. I'm also an Executive Officer and General Manager of the Human Resources Department at Tokyo Marine Holdings. I have been with the same company or group of companies, Tokyo Marine, since 1991. In the first part, Naomi talked about the reality of women's advancement in Japan in general and gave background information as well as what we need to do to increase women, especially on the board level. In my part, I will attempt to give some explanation from the perspective of the private sector as to why we are where we are, and also through my experience. I graduated from college in 1991 and joined Tokyo Marine the same year. As a newly grad, like most other colleagues, we enter into a so-called lifetime employment. And of course, people are free to leave for another job. Most men stay until the retirement age at 60. Since 1991, I built my career in claims within the company. And you will see here that I have rotated around different places and different departments in Japan and also overseas. So every 3 to 5 years, I have changed my role and responsibilities. I have relocated 7 times, all with the same company and with taking my family with me. So let's see. So this chart shows Japan's female labor participation rate, which actually has surpassed the US and Europe since about 2014. In the 1990s, you will see that Japan's female labor participation rate stood at about 55%, one of the lowest in the developed world back then. But since then, the percentage has risen sharply to nearly 71%. This is as of 2019. Growth in the number of working women has been particularly pronounced during the Abe years, where the number of employed females really increased. This is due to the government effort, also the private companies providing various support system. So in the early 2000s, a lot of female employees were able to continue working in the same position. So female employment rate is defined here as the percentage of women working outside of home versus female workforce between ages 15 and 64. So looking at this, maybe people will think that, well, maybe there's no more gap, but it is a little bit misleading. Oops. The majority of the working women are actually engaged in part-time rather than full-time employment. You will see here, and the type of employment. The chart on the right shows men. On blue, it says regular staff, but it really means part-time, full-time job. I mean, a permanent full-time job. So men, about 80% of them are in that sort of permanent employment. Women, on the other hand, on the left side, is about 43% in the permanent full-time position, and the rest are part-time or contract jobs. So the part-time and contract jobs lack stability, promotional opportunities, and benefits compared to the permanent full-time employees. So as we saw, there is still a gap between male and female in their employment contract. Also, the permanent positions and part-time positions. Actually, within the permanent positions, there are two career tracks. One is mostly men, and this is a little bit characteristic of the Japanese employment practice. It's, I guess, called professional career track, where the expectation is that one will stay until retirement age and build their career towards upper management. It is sort of a fast track, given many development opportunities, roles and responsibilities to prepare them for management roles. The other track is mostly filled by women, and they are more administrative or support staff track. And the expectation here is that the people in this track will not stay until retirement age, that they will leave the workforce either when they got married or when they had children. Now, this has changed over the last 20, 30 years. When I started working 30 years ago, it really was the case that when female got married, she would leave the workforce and become a housewife. But since then, the company has been making great strides in providing support systems, and also the government making laws. Japan actually has a child care leave for up to 1 year with some pay. And this is actually longer, I think, than most states in the United States. And so the role of women have also changed over the years because a lot of the administrative work has gone because of paperless and cashless operations. The chart you're seeing here shows the proportion of women in management position. And you can see that in Japan, it's on average about 14.8%. And Naomi had talked about the political field being a little behind, and economic field also still in the process of building the pipeline for future managers and executives. And society as a whole does still have the stereotype of gender roles. I think a lot of, well, the society as a whole expect the mothers to take care of the children. So let me talk a little about the status at Tokyo Marine and some initiatives. And this is Tokyo Marine in Japan. Over the years, we have been working to strengthen the pipeline to prepare more women for managerial positions. But it takes step-by-step promotion, as we can't just make somebody a general manager all of a sudden without experience and support system. So we have set a quantitative target to reach more than 50% female at pre-manager level by 2023. So this is people who would be ready to take on the manager role. And we actually achieved ahead of schedule in April of 2021 last year. We hit almost 55%. So at Tokyo Marine in Japan, pre-manager level, it's over 50%. So there's really no gender gap there. But when you look at the manager level on the chart on the right, we are currently at 10.4%. This is not a very high percentage. And as you saw, generally in Japan, most companies are really at this level. Some companies are ahead already at 20%, some are 30%, but most companies are really at about 10%, 12%. But as you can see, in 2011, it was only 3.6%. So we have made progress, but very slow. Now, we have set a new quantitative target in 2021 to reach 30% female at manager level or above. So this includes the managers of managers, and executives. But we now have a very strong pipeline built. So we have hope for the future, but we need to speed up the process. Now, I think that the companies have provided support systems such as the childcare leave, limited working hours or flexible working hours, work from home options, which really accelerated over the last 2 years. We have also mommy mentors who can guide the young mothers to get through the logistics and how to get through the daily life with young children, work-life balance, practical advice and such. So we have done a lot. And I'm going to show some of the initiatives at Tokyo Marine in Japan. Of course, one of the most important thing is, first of all, the top message, commitment from the top to say that they are looking to fill this gap and encouraging women to expand their roles and take more responsibilities, and thereby developing their career. So we have top messages coming out regularly on why we need to work on D&I, and Naomi had talked a little bit about that too. We also have town halls to discuss, mostly with male managers, to really understand why we need D&I. And one of the initiatives here is the Diversity and Inclusion Forum. We've held this forum since 2017 to encourage the general managers to really lead the DE&I initiatives as part of the company's growth strategy, and really to learn about and reflect on their own unconscious bias. Everybody has unconscious bias, even I do. And so we want the general managers to, first of all, understand what unconscious bias is and how that influences their decision-making. We have also created this Tokyo Marine Group Women's Career College, TWCC. This was started in 2019. And this is really to encourage female employees to build upon their careers and learn to step outside of their comfort zone. It also provides a safe place for learning and experience and encourage self-development as well as networking with other women. These are only a few examples, but we also have mentoring program, women's network, and also role model talk sessions. And we also have an enablement session for the executives, because we really need the executives to understand where the gap is and what to do. So we are making progress, although it seems very slow and incremental. In this limited time, I was only able to explain some factors, and I was not able to explain fully all the history of advancement, but I'd be happy to take some questions. I'll do my best to try to answer them. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you both for these very insightful and informative presentations. My apologies to Koshi-san for misstating your qualification. You're the first, the youngest female mayor. And my apologies also to Ms. Haruie Kitamura, who is the first, was the first female mayor in Japanese history. She was the mayor of Ashiya City in Hyogo Prefecture in 1991. So only about 21 years before Koshi-san became the mayor of Otsu. We already have a couple interesting questions coming in, and I'd like to encourage the audience to submit their questions so that we can integrate them and we can get to all of the questions, possibly, hopefully. But I'd like to start with question of my own, integrating actually Tsuyako Nakamura-san of Doshisha University's question jibes with my question. Mika-san, you can turn on, yeah. She asks about, to Ms. Koshi, how you can basically, how you change the subordinates' attitude, subordinates who are mostly male and they're not used to female leader. How did you, what did you find effective in changing their minds? That's the question. And integrating that, my question was that, how do you convince first men of who are not used to, like Otsu City's many of the subordinate that you worked with, who are not convinced of women's capacity to lead, or at least not used to women leading? How do you convince them that women are perfectly capable of leading just as men? And also, how do you, and this is relevant to what Mika-san was saying, and also Koshi-san's work at OnBoard, how do you convince women also that they can lead? Because they have to be convinced, they have to be confident that they can lead. And often the problem is that there are not enough women who are convinced of their capacity to lead when there are even some openings for those leadership positions. So if you could each speak to both of these issues, that would be a great point to start our discussion. Maybe Koshi-san can go first.
Yeah, so first I want to answer the audience question. So how I convince my subordinate? It's a good question and hard to answer. But I try to talk with them. So I had a lot of meetings. Most of my time as a mayor, I had a meeting with city employees. And in 8 years, some of them understand what I think. I already said, yes, the city is changing. We are losing population, so we have to change our way of spending money. I always say that, and I actually met with my subordinate and what I think and what citizens think. I told them, so some of them understood me, but even after 8 years, some of them still thinking I'm wrong. So it's hard, but I think only the way to convince them is talk with them. That's my answer. Also, how to convince women, it's also hard because I try to, at City Hall, there are 50% female managers, but it's including our nurse and kindergarten teacher. So excluding that occupation, there are only 5% female managers. So I try to promote more female to management position. But first they say, no, I don't want to do that because they said, I'm not confident. So I feel like it's very hard to convince them. But I also talked with women and we had many meetings and I found there are 2 reasons why they said no. One is a long working hour. because actually in Japan, women had more work at home, like raising children, take care of parents, and cooking. So if women have to stay office, if you promote to manager, you have to work more. It's impossible. So first I change our working style. So that is one thing, but still they said they are not confident. And I think it's very, so I did some survey research. In Otsu City, there are, we have junior high school and elementary school, city-owned schools. And at elementary school, there are, we have student president. And at elementary school, we have 50-50 girls and boys student president. At elementary, but at junior high school, there are only 20% girls president. So even if it's a junior high school, I asked them, they said I don't wanna stand out. So they said they don't wanna take leadership position. So they think when they are 12 or 13, they see more outside school. And for example, prime minister is men and the CEO is men. So they start thinking if women take leadership position, they are different. So they stop to take leadership position. So even before enter the city halls, the companies, they have less experience as a leader. So they are not confident. So it's very hard to convince them to take leadership position. But I think, for example, on board, we provide seminar. And also in a company, I think Mika-san have a good idea. Yes.
Thank you. Yes. So when I started working at the company, a lot of our clients were not used to seeing women handling their claims and coming to the negotiation table. So I just kind of had to prove myself that I can provide value. And I think you do need to, in a way, build a track record and build the trust with the client or the subordinate that you are serious about this work and you are going to be of value to them. But I do think it takes a little bit of observation, need to listen carefully and really have a dialogue as to what their needs are. And once you are able to fill that need, then you have built trust. So it takes time and effort, but you have to be kind of persistent and be honest and sincere while you're doing that. As for women, a lot of women do feel that they're not capable or not confident to take that new position or the role and responsibilities. And I think it just takes a little bit of small success. And so we need to give them small steps and assignments, sense of accomplishments. And I think that builds up to become the confidence. I also try to let them see that there is different leadership style. A lot of the role models are men because the managers are mostly men. And they look, the female employees will look at the male managers and say, well, I can't work like him. I can't be like a strong leader like him. But I tell them that, you know, the leadership style in this new world, which is very volatile, so to speak, and uncertain, you have to make your own leadership style. And it's okay to make your own leadership style. It doesn't have to be the same as that male leader. And it takes time for them to realize that. And so we do give support by mentorship. and also female networking really helps because they can talk to each other and realize that they're all sort of thinking about the same thing, but they can exchange ideas and try to do something new and step out little by little like that.
Great, thank you. I'm really glad to hear that, to know about your work in mentoring young generations of women so that they'll feel empowered and they will step up when they need to. Michi Kaifu-san asks some similar questions about what can we do to encourage more women to step up. And I think there are various dimensions to it, but one is, as Koshi-san briefly mentioned, education and socialization. So mentoring after they start working in corporations or government, that's also very, very important. But as Koshi-san mentioned, this stereotyping of men as leaders begin to take place very early on in Japanese children's upbringing. So is there anything we can do on that front? And also one anonymous person asks about how we might be able to change how we should speak up about practices like Japanese male colleagues socializing at hostess bars. The person talked about how gender diversity can never exist with that kind of workplace behavior, which shows underlying attitudes toward women. So that is, I don't know exactly how prevalent that kind of practice is today, but I would imagine it continues to exist. And that can often be a real barrier to women because some of the important negotiations take place in those sort of drinking sessions or on golf courses. So to what extent do you think it's important those places still play an important role in the advancement of any people in Japan in general, and how do women get into those spaces without having to join those drinking sessions or golf sessions?
Mm-hmm.
Either of you can.
Yeah, I think that kind of drinking sessions, men's club still exist, but it's changing, especially is this COVID situation change Japanese working style, including that kind of culture. Because before, I interviewed some women who used to work Japanese companies and now is work at foreign companies in Japan. And most of them said at Japanese company, the company evaluate employees, not only their performance, but also how long they were together. For example, go to drinking with boss or something like that. But COVID change situation, we can go to drink and we stay home and we don't have to be with them. So now is more, I guess now is more companies evaluate the employees' performance itself. And also, Japanese companies try to stop, sexual harassment. So it's not perfect, but I think it's changing.
Mika-san?
Yes, I agree with Naomi. I think this inclusive environment and being intentional about sharing information equally and not just talk amongst themselves while they're drinking or while they're smoking in the smoking room or while they're golfing. So the information has to be transparent, and I think the decision-making process needs to be inclusive. And that, I think, that's the education that we need for the male managers, that they're doing this unconsciously. And this is the unconscious bias. The boys network does still exist, but like Naomi-san said, it's changing now because of COVID. And also, I think the generation change. is going to change this, because the young men don't necessarily want to go golfing or drinking as often as our older generation did. So I think it's slowly changing a little bit. We also need to work on changing how we work. It's been said that the Japanese office workers are not very productive. So we need to increase the productivity and not spend long hours. The companies have changed to evaluate the employees, not by their length of time that they spend at the company, but by the performance or output of the work. So all of that combined together, I think things will start to change now.
Great, I'm glad to hear all these hopeful, optimistic views. This question actually came in as I was thinking about this. Karen Yamashita-san talks about how you both have American background. Mika-san, I don't think neither of us mentioned it, but Mika-san graduated from Davidson College, Steph Curry's college, which is meaningful around here. And also worked at Tokyo Marine US for a little while. And Koshi-san went to Harvard Law School. So and we can kind of see this as in terms of intersectionality to a certain extent. You are, especially Mika-san, when you studied, you were probably seen as somewhat different because you went to American college, not Japanese college. How did that play a role in how you are seen at your workplace, and also did it help, or did it create another hurdle to overcome in your advancement to where you are today?
Thank you. I have spent quite a long time in the US in all different times of my life. And when I started with Tokyo Marine, which was really a traditional Japanese company back then, I was seen as someone different, definitely different. One, I was a female in that professional career track. So I was one of really the few. And I also was educated in the United States. So I acted a little bit like an American, like I would share my opinion freely without reading the air, right? But I think in a way that helped me, because I was so different, that when you're a little bit different, then you get bashed, right? But if you're so different, then they kind of have this little bit of a respect for you, that you're very different, right? So I had an advantage in that sense. But sometimes, they would not really in a mean way, but it was a little bit exclusive, right? Because I didn't have that same Japanese university experience type of thing. So it worked both ways. So sometimes it was an advantage, and sometimes it was a little bit of a disadvantage. And I think it kind of canceled out. So I just dealt with the situation as it went.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I spent time in the US for 3 years, but it changed my life. So I grew up in Otsu, and when I was a child, I was a little bit different. I don't know, but I sometimes did different things from others. For example, I spoke up in the classroom, but it's very rare. It's not common in Japan. So I was bullied in my childhood, and I changed my attitude. Or when I did different from others, or I was attacked. So I should stop that. So that is what I was thinking I was in Japan, but I went to the US. I think I was already 33 or something. But when I went to law school, I have to speak up, even if it's wrong. And even if I was different from others, it's a good thing. So I changed my mind. So before, I never think of run for mayor because it's very different from others. But when I went to US, I was start thinking I should be different from others because this is me and it's not bad thing. So my experience in the US changed all my life.
That's great. That's great to hear. There are a couple of questions specifically addressed to each of you. So I'm going to get to that. One is from an anonymous person to Nabashima-san. You said it takes a long time to grow women's board members, but was women board members, but was hiring women executive not an option? That way it changes the dynamics a bit bit quicker, it seems. That's the question for Mika-san. To Koshi-san, if you don't mind, could you please share more about your own experience of becoming a female professional or a female leader in Japan? In addition to your different perspectives as a representative of young women, what other aspects led you to be elected mayor of Otsu City? Maybe Mika-san first.
Yes, so we've started with building our pipeline. First of all, at Tokyo Marine, we hire more than 50% female when they graduate from school. So they're more female than male to start with. So we really wanted to promote internally, but of course that takes time. And we have made advancements in that regard. And as the person asked, it is possible to hire from outside executive, but those people are now in very high demand in Japan. And there's actually not a very big pool for those female executives either. But we are working on hiring those executives as well as promoting internally all at the same time.
Koshi-san?
Yeah, so first I want to mention my experience of becoming a female professional, because this is because my mom always told me you have to be some professional. She means you have to be qualified something, because if you have some, you are professional, it's less discriminative. That she means. So I became lawyer and my sister is nurse. So and also the question is my experience becoming female leader. So this is very few female leaders in Japanese politics. So as, for example, mayors, when I became mayor, only 2% Japanese mayors are female, and now it's still 3%. It's very few. So sometimes it's hard. But the next question, how I was elected mayor of Otsu, I was elected. I think among the citizens, they are not discriminative. They are more, equal. Because I think I was, my first election, I ran for mayor. Also, previous mayor, he was 70 years old man, ran for mayor again. And so I beat him. I think the reason the citizens support me is they expect me because I was young women. So I have viewpoint from young women. Like I try to increase, I try to build more nursery. So they think, especially women, they expect me to have more women-friendly policies, childcare system. So I think that is a citizens' expectation.
Thank you. So we have been talking about more like a social side of things, but let's talk about policy and what the government can do to help advance women in Japanese society. And the government seems to be really committed to doing it, but I'm not sure if it has been doing a good job of advancing the kinds of policies that are most effective. So if you can talk a little bit about what kind of policies from the government might help the most. And there are some ideas around, for instance, gender quotas and this 30% female executive positions in executive positions is a target, right? Something like that with, I don't know, somehow stronger enforcement. Would that help, or would that backfire? And also, we hear a lot about how childcare, also elderly care, those are very important considerations for women when they have to decide whether to take leadership positions or not. So what can the government do more in addition to corporations or municipal governments? What can the Japanese government do to address all these issues?
So first, you mentioned quota. So this is the strongest measure. And, you know, like a European country, like France and Northern European countries have that kind of law. So they're, you know, for example, board members more than 40%, something like that. And now it's, you know, California has some law, you have minority board members. So I think that is the strongest measure. But yeah, but I don't think Japanese diet can't pass that kind of law because the majority is men. So it's a good measure, but it's not realistic in Japan because there are only 10% female representative in lower house in Japan. And so they don't want to pass that kind of law. We have some women empowering law, that kind of law, but it's, for example, for political parties, there is no obligation. They try to do the best, something like that. So it's hard, that kind of quota enforcement in Japan. So now Japanese, but it's a good thing. This year, now Japanese government discussing about disclosure, for example, to the company. So maybe from next year, Japanese listed company, have to disclose how much pay gap, how many female executives, managers. So disclosure encourage companies to try to change their, try to fix their pay gap. And your second question is we have to do we have many things to do, you know, childcare, elderly care. So when I was mayor, I focusing on a childcare system. Before, mothers have to take care of their children, but we have to change that. So now is more nurseries, so women can continue to work. It's very big change. And also about elderly care, Japanese system is quite good. So we have, I don't know how to say that, kaigo hoken is some elderly care insurance, national insurance system. I think it works well. So old people can go to day service, that kind of thing. So I think this part is changing, and now it's good.
Thank you, Mika-san.
Yes, I think before the government forces quota onto private sector corporations, they need to do better themselves. The political field, it really hasn't changed in the last 15, 20 years, like Naomi-san said. So the politicians, as well as the government employees, I think that needs to change. And perhaps quota makes sense in that field. For the private sector, we have been working on this gender gap initiatives for a long time, and we have been making progress. So I don't think it is necessarily a good thing for the government to mandate some sort of a quota. It really depends on the company, the business that they're in, and the history of their D&I initiatives as well. Childcare, I think, is really important that government could support in that regard. I think the nursery, it depends on the municipalities. There are some places you still can't get into. And because Japan is an aging society, of course, the elderly care is something that the men will face as well. So how to balance work and care work isn't really a women's issue anymore. So I think that realization, I think that needs to be more public, and the society, I think, really needs to understand that taking care of the elderly or the children shouldn't just be on the women's shoulders. And so I think in that way, the education is really important as well.
And on that point, it's not just on women. Yurin Kim asks about what kind of projects exist that would especially specifically address men and boys outside professional setting that serve to reduce the continuous gender gap in the Japanese culture. How are there any projects that try to reduce sort of gender stereotypes among men and boys?
Yeah, I think this is very good question because we, for example, in a company, now we try to promote women, but I think the important thing is that their boss, their male boss, try to change their mind. So the education is very important. So in a company, I think there are now many systems. Also, we, for example, at the, in Otsu, in my city, at elementary school, junior high school, as I mentioned, I said there is a few female leaders, more male leaders. So I try to say, but the problem is a teacher recognize that is problem. Teacher said it's normal, they said. So I talked with teachers. So we first teachers, first teachers have to think this is problem. So they encourage women, they encourage girls to run for president and to take leadership position. And also the boys, it's sometimes if women stand out, sometimes bullied. So we have to educate both of them. Yeah.
Mika-san, yeah, is there anything at Tokyo Marine that is targeted men?
Yes, we have an extensive unconscious bias training program that we ask all the managers to take, and most of the managers are currently men. But just one training isn't going to change everything, and so we have to continue to do this program, I think, every year, and it does take time. But I think, again, the generation, the value of the younger generation is changing to be more equal, I think. They want equality. Men want equality as well. So although it does take time, we do have targeted training for executives and managers, especially on the unconscious bias front.
I'm also wondering about, so we hear a lot about backlash against feminism in South Korea, right? That's becoming a powerful force that actually shaped the last presidential election to a certain extent. I'm wondering if, and you are connected to all the all those people who work to advance women in the workplace in Japan. Do you hear some of that, men kind of feeling like they're getting passed over unfairly for this societal pressure to advance women? And how do you address that when you hear something like that?
So it's not that movement is not, yeah, I heard of that, but it's not, it's different from South Korea. So some people says like, oh, for example, I try to put more women on board. Sometimes, for example, male executives or male lawyers said, "Oh, if more women, we can't be board members. We can't be. There is no more seat for men." That kind of thing I heard. But when I heard that, I said, "Look at the situation. Now is only 7% female board members. If it's increased like 30%, still more men seat. And I think 50-50 is equal. So you just are afraid of losing your seat." So yeah, what I said.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add on that, Mika-san?
Yes, we do hear that sort of complaint or dissatisfaction favoring women as opposed to men. But we are trying to correct the imbalance and also the gap that it has existed for a long time. And also that, as I explained earlier, the leaders that we're looking for now may not be the same leaders that we were looking for in 10 years, 20 years before. So who fits that role is changing. So, and it's not necessarily that it should all be women, but it should be a new future leader, which includes women and men and all sorts of different types of people. So I think it's not really about men versus women, but it's really looking at the diversity and how we can include diverse people.
It sounds to me like not only should women be promoted, but also older men have to sort of step out of their positions at some point, because a lot of men in the 40s, 50s, men in that range will be the ones who feel like they're getting passed over, right? Because women in their age group get advanced more from their point of view. So if older men retire or step out of the important positions, then that will create more openings for both men and women in that younger generation. Anyway, there's another question from Donald Shi, who I think this question is about what are the best takeaways from America and Japan for Japanese women to shine brighter, and also what are the bad examples that Japan might not want to copy. I think from the focusing on the United States, do you learn, are there any models that American corporations or governments have been adopting that that could be useful for Japan? And on the other side is, do you see anything in the US in terms of gender equality that would be kind of like a counterexample, examples that show how things might not work if they're applied to Japanese workplace?
So I think I mentioned in my presentation, now is American companies, especially, proxy advisory companies and institutional investors, but all American companies ask Japanese company to have more female board members and female executive. So this kind of pressure is from American company. So I think it's good way because they invest that company, so they have real power. So it's good thing. It's actually changing Japanese companies. So this kind of American, activism it works in Japan now, and we have more pressures. So yeah, inside Japanese, institutional investors, shareholders, they are not that aggressive. So I think it's good thing. And I don't know, it does not work. Yeah, I have no idea now, sorry.
Mika-san?
I think the U.S. has a longer history of working on diversity and equity and also inclusion. So there are very many good examples. I mean, the sponsorship or mentorship, talent management, really being intentional about choosing female or adding female as a candidate for a successor position. And all those things we have been working on instituting here as well. And I think the lifestyle is different as well. And the mentality of men sharing the care work or housework in the US is, and I mean, it all depends on the family, of course, it's all different. But Japanese men tend to not spend a whole lot of time on housework and childcare. A lot of times because they are stuck with a company, working late in the office or going out drinking, and that's part of the work that they say that it's part of the work. So something like that. I mean, that's a little bit different. And like I said, the generational thing, the younger generation have a different mindset on that front as well. So that will probably change. But yeah, I do think that a lot of the things that that the U.S. companies have tried have been successful. And so we are trying to do what we can here as well.
Great. I think this should be our last question. So from what you presented here, we have actually some reasons to be optimistic. The pipeline, sounds like pipeline looks good. And right now the proportion of female executives is something like 7.8%, but it's going up, right? So it seems to me like you have very optimistic views about the future, but if you could underscore that point again and project in the next 5-10 years, where would women in the workplace be in Japan? And added to that is a second question: what would be the biggest obstacle for women to make more gains in the workplace in terms of advancing to leadership positions? I'd like to close with those two concluding thoughts from you.
Okay, so first, I think in 10 or 15 years, our workplace will be very different. So I think COVID changed our work style. So it's huge. Before, we always have to go to office, stay there for a long time. But now it's a big Japanese company. You can stay home, work from home. It's changing. So it's good for women, also men. We don't have to commute for 2 hours. So I think if without COVID, it might take for 10 years, but it happened very quickly in 2 years. So I think this kind of change is happened more. And also, for example, Keidanren said 30% female board members by 2030. I don't think it's gonna happen, maybe, but 20% female executive board members. I hope we will have 20 or 25 female board members by 2030, and it might be happen. And also, what is the obstacles? And I'm sorry, I misunderstand Donald's question, but I think now is working style is changing. So the next step is changing our mind. So that the now is a management position is occupied mostly men. So they have to change their way of thinking. So women and also women can be more confident. It takes time, as Mika-san mentions. It's small success. We have to it takes time, but women can be more confident. So I think it's challenge.
Thank you. Mika-san?
Yes, I am optimistic. As we have been working on this for quite some time, and we have made some advances. And it may seem slow and incremental, but we're definitely making progress. And I think the mindset of our female employees have changed a lot. And, a little bit, 5 years ago, people would keep saying that I don't have a role model near me, but that's not true. There are many, many role models now. And I think it's a fact that female employees have now are able to continue working and also advance their career as well. So a lot of the system, the hardware is there, the software is there, and the top commitment is there, and the investment, pressure from the investors are there. So it's really a good time to make a further progress. We are going into the right direction. And I think the question is speed. We are trying to speed up where we can, but we also don't want to just throw people into roles that they're not ready. And I do agree with Naomi-san about the obstacle being really the mindset, the unconscious bias. We really need to fight that. But as Naomi-san said, the work style change, behavior change slowly translates into mindset change. And so COVID, as sad as it was this past 2.5 years, it has had a positive effect on how we work and how we look at work and I guess life as well. But I do feel that we are going in the right direction.
Wonderful. On that optimistic note, I'd also like to mention that you two are both amazing role models for a lot of women, not only in Japan, but also in the US and in the world. So thank you for what you do. And also thank you for sharing your views and experiences with us today. Just for the Stanford community people, Koshi-san will actually be here at Stanford as at APAC as a visiting fellow next year. So you might see her around at some point. And I'd like to make sure that Mika-san will also come here at some point for some kind of event or conference in person in the near future. Thank you again for joining this session. And this being the last session of the academic year, I'd also like to thank Kana-san for taking care of all the logistics for all our webinars throughout the year. Thank you, Kana. And thank you everyone for joining us and for asking all these very insightful questions. And we'll resume our sessions, probably hybrid style next year, sometime in late September, early October. So until we meet again, have a great summer. I hope I'll see both of you sometime in Japan in summer. But the audience, I'll see you in the fall. So thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.